If you're like me, you have almost no control over what goes on in your head. It's a never-ending cycle of thoughts, fears, fantasies, and emotions. Not to mention, my mind has a comment about almost everyone and everything. It's incredibly difficult to be still, inwardly or outwardly. The best way I've heard it put is, when I'm overwhelmed by thoughts and emotions, I'm going back to an object. Each time I go back, I'm reinforcing an obsession. Judd Brewer calls this a habit loop. Ethan Kross calls it chatter. Lisa Feldman Barrett calls it affect. None of these people seem to agree on its true nature, or even about how our brains work. For example, Judd Brewer believes in the triune brain. Lisa Barrett does not. Ethan Kross recommends distanced self-talk to deal with it. Judd Brewer recommends looking at the cycle of stimulus, behavior, and reward. What these psychologists have in common is an interest in mindfulness and meditation, and an awareness that the mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. The truth is, I am not my thoughts. Unhappiness comes from my mental commentary about situations, not the situations themselves. The absence of thought can be thought of as emptiness or spaciousness. I can't turn my brain off, but a state of not thinking can be arrived at in various ways. One way is to look at the nature of consciousness. Another is to become more aware of the present moment and accept it as it is. Yet another way is to simply get out of my head. To get out of my head, I count backwards from 5 and drop into my lower belly. I breathe from my lower belly, taking full conscious breaths. I form a direct relationship with myself and the present moment by clearing away whatever is blocking me from these relationships. Eckhart Tolle says, "Allow so completely that, through the act of allowing, spaciousness arises around what is. Through acceptance I become open, and through openness I become aware. This is where inner work and mindfulness begin." Some people visualize thoughts as clouds floating across the sky, others as waves in the ocean, or projections on a screen. Sometimes they're people walking down the street with their own personalities. They shout, throw things, and very rarely behave. None of the voices in my head are me. Mindfulness is the practice of creating an inner freedom from overwhelming thoughts and emotions. Over time, it becomes an ability to quietly observe phenomena, including my own behavior. Through practice, something beyond thought emerges. Through reflection, I become more conscious of my habitual patterns. Think of the worst things have ever seemed, or the angriest you've ever been. That was real. Then think of the day everything was terrific, or when you were elated. That was also real. What is the thread that ties these states together? The only thing that changes is the situations presented to me and how I react. Anthony de Mello says, "Every time I'm unhappy, I've added something to reality. Reality provides the stimulus. I provide the reaction. I have added something with my reaction. If I examine what I have added, there is always an illusion there, a demand, an expectation, a craving. I become at ease by accepting things as they are, no matter what I'm presented with. When I stop resisting and allow what is, I am in presence. I'm practicing the letting go muscle. Things arise, I let go, I come back to the present moment. Presence is the idea that behind every thought there is awareness. This is what spiritual teachers call the watcher, the witness, or formless presence. Jack Cornfield calls it mindful, loving awareness. Eckhart Tolle calls it alert attention. It is what is not the narrator or storyteller or problem creator. Some teachers refer to presence as a lack of resistance. It's related to things like surrender and acceptance. I don't surrender through efforting or trying. I embrace. I get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's the absence of the mind arguing with reality. It's an open acceptance of whatever arises. It's turning towards what you don't want to turn towards. Most people start this process with a meditation practice. The basis of meditation is to acknowledge whatever is happening and welcoming it. I unconditionally welcome felt experience moment by moment. I make friends with any thought, feeling and emotion, no matter how difficult. I am resting in the consciousness rather than the content of experience. When I meditate, the first thing I'm met with is not quiet or calm. I am confronted with mixed messages, fear and anxiety. If I recognize these things with the attitude of wanting them to go away, they will remain. When I accept what is uncomfortable, I realize these feelings are passing states. They will go away if I don't resist them. Through openness, I'm more comfortable with uncertainty and more flexible with life. A lot of what comes up is projections into the future. When I get caught in positive or negative thinking, I'm getting hooked on stories I'm telling myself. All these stories are fictional. A lot of inner work is about unhooking myself from these stories. When I'm up in my head thinking, I smile and soften. I go back to my belly. I realize I don't have to identify with my mental habits and conditioning. When I buy into or admonish thoughts, I can catch myself and make better decisions. I become less identified with neuroses and desires. The intensity of rumination and self-absorbed storytelling recedes. I become more caring about how I express myself. I take a more reasoned, reflective, and calmer approach. I use the intensity of emotions as a cue to interrogate what's going on. Another thing that comes up is judgment. Esther Perel says we want people to see the complexity in us while we simplify them. I put my pain and insecurity on other people. I project my own inadequacies and dissatisfaction into the world. When possible, it helps to drop and see who I really am is not the momentary comings and goings of my mind. Mindfulness is warm and open. It doesn't evaluate. I step back from all forms of judgment. I discover that if I condemn a behavior in someone else, I probably exhibit that behavior myself. The first thing that feeds the judging mind is my belief in thoughts. The second thing is my condemnation of them. The pattern only weakens through awareness. If there is a goal, I'm looking for a place within myself where I can be at ease. I do this by learning to dwell in my body. What follows is a feeling of groundedness, a basic sense of being okay. From here, I can sincerely interact and relate to other people. The counterintuitive thing is, as I become more aware, I start seeing things I'm unhappy about. I notice the same patterns over and over again. Things like anger, frustration, annoyance, and impatience. It can actually seem like these things worsen. It's more likely these feelings were there all along. I just didn't notice them. This awareness is actually a good thing. It's through seeing these things again and again that the sense of it meaning anything about me lessens. I become more familiar with the nuances and intensity of these emotions. Over time, my perspective shifts. The stuff that justified my existence and the desire for achievement start to diminish. Mathieu Ricard says that everyone on earth is motivated by a desire for peace and tranquility. This makes sense, right? Peace is more than fleeting happiness or pleasure. It's a sense of serenity, fulfillment, and purpose. It's a state that pervades all other states. But a lot of my actions suggest that peace is not really the thing I value most. I once heard about a woman who had an aneurysm. It annihilated the language center of her brain, which meant that she could no longer form thoughts, which shows you how much language and thought are connected. During this time, she was in a state of bliss. She was experiencing nirvana, the thing everyone is supposedly after. She was perfectly at ease because there was no egoic, memory-based mental chatter humming along at 100 miles per hour, commenting on everything. When the sun hit her face, she didn't say, "Oh, that's nice, the sun's hitting my face." She just experienced it. Eventually, she started the process of rehabilitation. Over time, she regained her memory, as well as her ability to form thoughts and words. After a while, she came to a realization. If she continued therapy, she would regain her old life but lose the peace she had found. What did she do? Inevitably, she chose her old life. Her ego won that battle. Even more than peace, humans have a profound need to feel accepted, respected, and connected. Serene Jones points out that on one hand, humans are capable of extraordinary things. On the other, we have this propensity to choose what is not good for us. We exhibit harmful and self-destructive behavior. Life often appears to be the struggle between these two realities, and that tension never goes away. Everything I think I know is from my perspective. My ego, my life, and my ideas make up my kingdom or bubble. The hardest thing to do is give these things up. We'd like to believe selflessness is what's really valued, but selfishness and narcissism are so often rewarded. Letting go of a conceptual self sounds nice. The prayer that says, "Relieve me of the bondage of self," sounds nice. But this is not a one-and-done process. I have to let go of things, and they have to be individually questioned for the rest of my life. There's a woman in the movie Waking Life who says, when she was young, she thought that everything would gel and settle at some point, just end. She says, "It was like there was this plateau and it was waiting for me, and I was climbing up it, and when I got to the top, all growth and change would stop, even exhilaration. But that hasn't happened like that, thank goodness. I think that what we don't take into account when we're young is our endless curiosity. That's what's so great about being human. But all this caring, all this inquiry and curiosity, it's exhausting. Much of psychology is concerned about mindsets that will put us on the path to success that is making my life nice. Some of these ideas include grit, self-efficacy, growth mindset, and locus of control. Growth mindset is the belief that the ability to learn is not fixed, that it can change with effort. Locus of control has more to do with outcomes. Is the actual outcome that I want going to be my doing or not? If you have an internal locus of control, you think you affect outcomes, probably more than you actually do. If you have an external locus of control, you're more likely to see yourself as the victim of external forces. Self-efficacy is more interested in saying we have agency over behavior and performance, but you're letting go of the outcome. That's a very important nuance. We do have agency, and it's more productive to pay attention to the things we can control. Moreover, this is a spiritual idea. The idea that we can't change circumstances, but we can always change how we react to circumstances. And we're responsible for how we react. The spectrum of opportunity people have is wide. Life has possibilities for everyone. Yet, most philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual teachers come to the same realization, which is, I don't have the power to make my life go the way I want it to. Fixing my life won't make me happy. I will never get to a point where I figure out the world and manipulate things to get what I want. In part, because I don't know what I want, and even if I got it, it wouldn't make me happy. I can spend time trying to rearrange the world to suit my tastes, but there is always tension because the world is always changing. The idea that we're responsible for how we react is also a huge part of emotional intelligence, which is a repackaged version of Ali Hochschild's concept, emotional labor. Daniel Goleman watered down her concept in the same way articles like Burnout and How to Avoid It So You Can Work Harder water down a system wherein most people are overworked and underpaid. Merv Emery points out that emotional intelligence is a vision of personal freedom achieved paradoxically through constant self-regulation, and it places the onus of emotional labor almost entirely on the individual. People think of inner work as mind training to be able to overcome something in the moment. But it's also architecting my environment in such a way as to not let certain behaviors run riot. According to Lisa Barrett, things that help put us on the path to success, a phrase Angela Duckworth also likes to use, are things that are easy for people who are privileged enough to have control over their environment. Getting enough sleep, eating well, making positive social connections, having access to mentors, these things matter. Research by Dan Lieberman and experiments like Rat Park would suggest the environments we inhabit play a major role in our well-being. Even looking at more benign circumstances tell us much about how our environments affect us. A lot of what spirituality and psychology have to do with is reactivity. One definition of emotional intelligence is responding to stimuli from a less reactive space. So this idea that you can't control circumstances but you can control your reaction, is that true? Where you end up in life has a lot to do with where you begin. People born poor die poor. Growing up in poverty correlates with disparities in education, health and employment. Aspects of poverty, subpar nutrition, elevated stress levels, low-quality education, can influence cognitive development, as well as actual brain development, the surface area of the brain, the volume of certain brain structures. Deprive someone of sleep, they become more reactive. Add testosterone to someone's bloodstream, they become more reactive. There's even research that indicates economic insecurity reduces pain tolerance. So is it unfair and unwise to focus so much attention on what individual people can do to deal with their environment? Lisa Barrett provides this example. Does a virus cause the common cold? Scientists sequester human subjects in hotel rooms and give them all the same dose of a virus, the common cold. Only 20–40% of people get sick with symptoms. This means that exposure to a virus is not the same as infection. A virus is not the cause of illness. It's a necessary factor, but it's not the cause. What are the other predictors of who gets sick? Things like poverty, childhood adversity, chronic stress, and the state of your immune system determine if you get sick. People living with chronic stress and who are living in adverse circumstances are not only more likely to be exposed, they are also more likely to get sick from exposure. Sickness is partially a matter of your personal history, which is based on where you live, your access to medical care, and your ability to get fresh food and air. The focus on our response to the pandemic has been individual, but has not included the collaborating factors that create infection. Systemic causes. Illness doesn't have a single simple cause. There's a network of causes all working together. So it is proved that inner and outer work is deeply related. Thanks for watching.